Hello and welcome to TNCRadio.live. This is Keep On Talkin' with your host, Tom Kirk. Tom is an over-the-road driver with over 2 million safe miles. On this show, he interviews the people who help make the trucking world happen. It's real life, live from the road.
So I'm here with Lewie Pugh, Vice President of OOIDA. Is that your current title, or do you have a different one?
No, I'm the Executive Vice President of OOIDA, or OOIDA, Owner Operator Independent Driver Association, whatever you want to call it, here at beautiful Louisville, Kentucky at Matt's, our last day. Kind of sad, kind of glad, but kind of sad.
I know the feeling. I mean, this is one of the first years that I haven't felt super. I mean, I'm tired, don't get me wrong, but I haven't been looking for somebody with a hand truck or a wheelbarrow to take me out.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing.
It is, and I mean, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of short sleep nights, but it's been a lot of fun meeting a lot of great people. I've seen some old friends and new friends. You, Mark, making some great friends over there with Shell and a whole bunch of other places. So definitely having a lot of fun. So why don't we start off with maybe the best place to start? How did you get into trucking, Lewie?
Well, a long time ago, about 1977 or 78, there was this movie.
In a galaxy far, far away.
Yes, exactly. Well, it wasn't that movie.
Okay.
But I like that movie. I like the original trilogy. I don't like the other ones, but I like that movie too.
Fair
but no, there was a little movie with Burt Reynolds and Jackie Gleason and Jerry Reed, Smokey and the Bandit, and they, were bootlegging some beer out of Arkansas back to Atlanta or Texarkana, I guess. And I was just a little guy. My dad was a blacksmith in the summertime and a truck driver in the wintertime. And I saw that movie, and from that time, I mean, it sounds cliche, but from that time on, I wanted to be a truck driver. And I've seen that movie many times now. My dog's even named after that, the Bandit.
Okay.
He used to ride around with me in the truck when I was trucking. And so I grew up on a farm, learned to drive equipment and stuff, and then when I turned 18 and graduated, joined the Army and became a truck driver there. And then when I turned 21 on my 21st birthday, I got my CDL and went to work for a big carrier for about a year, and then bought my own truck, and the rest is history, I guess.
Definitely is. So how many years have you, we'll still call you a truck driver. So how many years have you been trucking or involved in trucking?
I've been involved in trucking, let's see, I'm going to be 49 years old. So as far as professional commercial trucking, and I was 21 from 49, that's what, 27 years,
well,
28 years?
Yeah,
28 years.
Yeah, 28.
Yeah,
don't ask me to do, I'll tell you what, don't ever hire.
Too long to do math.
Don't ever hire me for the accounting department at OOIDA.
Yeah, me too. But no, so yeah, it'll be 29 years, and I came off the road in 2017 to go to work at OOIDA. Kept my truck for about another year and a half because I wasn't sure if driving a desk was going to fit my lifestyle or me. And it's been a little tough. I miss it every single solitary day. I mean, especially, I'm from Ohio originally. I moved out to Missouri where I took this job. When I go back home, I leave at night and drive all night, and I wish I was in one of them trucks with them guys. And I don't miss a lot of the bullshit, but I miss trucking.
I hear that. Well, I guess the question is, have you ever thought about getting yourself, I don't know, maybe an old antique truck and doing parades or various other events with it?
Well, it's funny you say that. I have, and I'm kind of loosely looking. We go on vacation every year. We ride motorcycles, me and a bunch of my friends, and I actually have a sidecar for my dog. And but anyway,
you remind me of a girlfriend. Every time we pass a Harley dealership, she'd go, "Oh, money, punny, a Harley motorcycle and a sidecar for the dog."
Well, I'm glad that's why I remember your girlfriend, because if it was for anything else, she must have been awful ugly.
Oh, we're not going there. We're not going there in case she ever listens to this show. But on that note,
yeah. But back to your original question. A couple years ago, right before COVID, we took a 2-week trip and we rode from Joplin all the way to Santa Monica on Route 66, which was a dream trip of mine. And so now we did it on a motorcycle and come back. My buddies that I ride bikes with all got old cars. They want to take their old cars on Route 66. So I'm kind of looking for an old truck to take on Route 66 instead of an old car. I want to take an old semi-track.
Well,
I don't know. God's talking to us.
Yes, I know.
I feel like Noah. Should I build an ark?
Lewie, from what I've seen of the two of us, if either one of us tried to build an ark, it'd sink.
Probably.
But I happen to know a bunch of great people that know where you can find all kinds of old trucks.
Yeah, that's cool. I know. These are cool guys. I know some of these guys myself.
But yeah, in case people haven't figured out, the American Truck Historical Society has let me grab a corner of their booth for recording today, and I literally walked over to the OOIDA booth, saw Lewie, and people will witness this, grabbed him by his name tag and started dragging him out of the booth.
Yeah, I felt like a dog who got in a sheep or something.
Well, he was only supposed to have been here 2 hours ago. So.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a little quick story about that real quick. I used to go to church, and my preacher was a retired truck driver, and I was late for church quite often. And one day I showed up for church, I was about 10 minutes late, and he's doing announcements and everything, and I kind of sneak in, sit down the back door, and he's like, "Mr. Pugh." And I said, "Yes, sir, Pastor." He goes, "I'm glad to see you. Could make it and join us." And I said, "Thank you, Jim." And he said, "When I was a truck driver, I made sure I was everywhere I needed to be on time." I said, "That's why I'm an independent contractor. They're just happy to see me when I show up."
Well, I won't mention the name of the company exactly, but there was a time when I was on this one account for a company I worked for. It was one of the mega carriers. And we kept showing up to a major place that made, we'll just say hot dogs. And we had been having a bit of a history of running late recently. So the joke was I walked in, blank transport, when it absolutely positively has to be 2 to 3 days late. Use blank transport. I did not know this. The plant manager was in the office.
Oops.
She fell out of the chair. She says, she was laughing. She says, you do not know, number one, how true that is, nor how funny that is. Because I guess there had been a stretch there where almost every load coming in for production was at least 1 to 2 days late, if not 3.
Oops.
Yeah, oops is right. So anyways, we've done a little bit. What was your CB handle, if you don't mind me asking?
Bum steer.
I'm not touching that one.
And that was the name of my trucking company, Bum Steer.
I'm not touching that one with a 10-foot pole.
Well, I tell you, it's not what a lot of people think. When I was a little kid, we used to go trail riding up in the mountains every year for a week. I was on vacation. We'd take horses and go trail riding. And there was an old cowboy guy up there, and his last name was Steer, but they called him Angus Steer. And I followed him around, like little kids do when they latch on to somebody. Yep. And he kind of took me under his wing and let me. Put up with a lot of dumb stuff probably, and taught me a lot of dumb stuff. But anyway, so everybody started calling me Bum Steer since he was Angus Steer and I was Bum Steer, and it stuck. And that's who I've always been. That was my nickname in high school and my CB handle, and still is.
Well, that's very cool. So we've talked a little bit about there. So I guess about how you got into trucking. So let's just do a couple real quick questions, if you don't mind. Why did you decide to go from company driver to owner operator?
Because I always wanted to be one. I mean, honestly, like I said, when I was little, I guess I didn't understand what an owner operator was, but as I got older, I did, and that was always my dream. And I took VOAG in high school, and my VOAG teacher had been a truck driver, prior an owner operator, steel hauler, and stuff. So my dad was always a company driver, and but like I said, he drove truck in the winter, and then started doing it full time when his back gave out and he couldn't shoot horses anymore. But I just always wanted to own my own truck. That was my dream. And so like I said, as soon as I saved all my money in the Army, I didn't do a lot of dumb stuff, and got out and got about a year's experience and bought my own truck and trailer and started pulling a flatbed back and forth the East Coast out of the Ohio Valley.
That works. So when did you get involved with OOIDA and why?
I joined OOIDA in 1996, and I'd only been trucking for 2 or 3 years, but I was always raised, like I said, I was raised on a farm. My grandparents, my parents were always involved in community organizations and bigger organizations, and I knew that no matter what it is, whether it's Farm Bureau for farmers or something, if you want to change things, you got to be involved. And so even at a young age, I was always interested in politics and all that kind of stuff. I guess I'm a history government nerd. So I joined OOIDA because when I first read and learned about OOIDA, another owner operator told me about him that I was working with. And I liked the fact that they were started by truckers, they were run by truckers, and they were governed by truckers. You can't be on the board unless you drive a truck. You can't be the president, CEO, can't be me, or him unless you've been sitting in a seat. And I like that. So I joined, stayed involved, was kind of like loosely involved, I guess. And in 2004, I ran for the board. I was nominated, ran for the board. I think I'm the youngest board member they ever had at the time. I was 31 years old. And here we are now in 2017. Before Jim passed, he called me up one day and said, "Hey, what do you think about coming out here and working? You seem like you could be a sharp guy." And I guess he was. I feel like I'm a doll, but whatever. So.
Let's put it this way: you managed to fool him.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a good bullshitter. So, anyway.
Bump steer trucking.
Exactly, BS. So anyway, with that being said, I came out and was there, and then with Jim's passing, unfortunately, Todd was elected president, and the board had enough, faith in me, thankfully, to make me executive vice president. So.
Well, that's definitely good to hear. So I know you're busy, so I don't want to keep you too much longer.
Oh, I'll stand here and talk all day.
That's a problem. We both could. So why don't you tell us a little bit about OOIDA and why you think it's important?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I like to tell everybody about OOIDA, first and foremost, OOIDA's number one mission is fighting for the rights of truckers, both owner-operators, small business truckers, and drivers. A lot of people get confused with our name, the Owner-Operator Independent Driver Association. They think we're only for owner-operators, when actually our name's a little dated. We were started in 1973 prior to deregulation, and the independent driver in our name actually means a driver that's not a Teamster. So that's where I say we're all drivers. We advocate for regulations for small business truckers, but we also advocate for the hours of service change that came a couple years ago. That was petitioned by us at OOIDA. And, company drivers, you follow a lot of the same rules on the highway. You have to follow the same FMCSA rules and all that kind of stuff that owner-operators do, so we're advocating for you too. We have insurance, we have a drug consortium, we do permitting, we do licensing. We also have a health and welfare department. We have all kinds of discounts for owner-operators and drivers, so company guys can get these discounts as well. And one thing I think is the greatest thing you can get for your membership of OOIDA is our compliance department. If you have any kind of problems out there, any kind of questions, something with specking a truck, find out something out about a ticket you got, you need to file data queue, you don't think your carrier's treating you correctly, whatever, you call our compliance department and they will help you fix your problem the best they can. They'll walk you through all the steps. I always tell people, they don't always give you the answer you want, but they'll give you the right answers and they'll help you every way, and that's free. If you're a member, that's a free, and to me, you can't beat that.
And you really can't, because I had been a OOIDA member a number of years ago, and it reached a point where I had felt, as a company driver, there was a bit of a shift, and I don't mean that's necessarily in a bad way, where OOIDA was really focusing on some of the owner-operator issues, and I understand that not everybody's issues are going to be the same. But there was a focus there where I felt that sometimes the company drivers were being ignored. I don't know if ignored is quite the right word, but the way the owner-operator interests were kind of contradictory to the company driver. So I decided to back off for a while. And I got to say, I kept watching you guys. And over the last few years, I've kind of noticed, wait a second, now the interests are kind of coming back in conjunction again, shall we say. And, I think I felt as a company driver, you were doing a lot more that was closer to the way either I thought or believed or felt we should be represented in Washington. So actually at Joplin last year, Todd and I got talking, and next thing I knew, Todd could convince me to sign up.
Industry movement Trucking Moves America Forward is telling the story of the industry. Our safety champions, the women of trucking, independent contractors, the next generation of truckers, and more. Help us promote the best of our industry. Share your story and what you love about trucking. Share images of a moment you're proud of. And join us on social media. Learn more at truckingmovesamerica.com.
Well, and it's funny you say that. When I first joined OOIDA many, many moons ago, I would get landline and I'd read through there, and at the time there was a lot of stuff going on with lumpers, and they were fighting some lumper fights in Detroit, and refrigerant. It's like everything I read about was reefer stuff. And I thought, I'm a flatbedder, I don't even know, but I stayed with it. And what I've learned from being there so long, our board of directors and our membership kind of guides us on our regulatory legislative pattern, because you're right. What works for one doesn't always work for another. You can't make everybody happy, but we try. We look at the big picture.
Right.
But what people don't realize, and I didn't realize that honestly until I really started working there and going to Washington, when you're doing stuff in Washington, D.C., you have to strike when the steel's hot, the anvil's hot.
Right.
And what I'm getting at is, like ELDs, for example.
And that was the issue I was thinking of without going out trying to say it out loud. But now since you brought it up, we'll go down that road.
But we fought against the ELDs. We did everything we could do. Nobody else was fighting against it but us. And unfortunately, we fell short, but we tried. We have members all the time. What are you guys doing about ELDs? What are you doing? Well, we still bring it up in Washington, but the political reality of our world right now, the administration and with the people who are in charge, ELDs aren't going anywhere because they're for ELDs.
Right.
Now, if there's a shift in Washington, then maybe that window will open, and that's when we strike. And that's, you kind of have to play that game of who's in charge at what time of what you can and cannot do.
And here's my counter to that, coming from maybe more of the company driver world. It's that old thing, either you're compliant or you're not. And I heard a lot of owner-operators who would get on certain radio shows, particularly the overnight ones, and they would say, well, I can run compliant on paper logs, but I can't run compliant on ELDs. And the second they said that, I'd be screaming at my radio, because you and I know what they just both admitted to.
Yes.
So the thing is my take is, if you're running compliant, it doesn't really matter one way or the other. And if you're quote unquote advocating against it, and this is my personal opinion, and not necessarily that of TNC Radio or its management. But if you're admitting to that kind of stuff and you're doing it that way, it doesn't matter if you run paper or electronic. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of glitches and issues with electronic that I don't like. That's a separate issue.
Right.
But the principle is, if you're saying that I don't like it because it doesn't let me do this or doesn't let me do that, well, it means you weren't running compliant. And every time they hear you say that at least in the back of my mind, if I was a regulator or a safety advocate, well, that's exactly why we need them, because they were doing things they weren't supposed to.
You are 110% correct. In OOIDA, as an organization, we were never against an ELD. Anybody want to have one could have one. We were against it being mandated, because all the ELD is supposed to do is record your hours of service. That data can't be used for anything else.
Right.
We did get that put in there, that's all it can be used for. Our argument has always been, yeah, it tracks the driving time, but it still doesn't track that driver who's sitting at a dock for 6 hours off duty, and maybe he's loading or unloading a trailer, because you don't know what the driver's still doing.
Right.
And it's a big burden, it's a big expense. Unfortunately, the way they did the self-certification, there was 1 million ELD companies when this all started. I know guys who've had 4 different ELDs now because the companies keep going out of business.
Yep.
So,
and some of them are pretty major companies too.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right, that's a separate issue. Really, the ELD in the grand scheme of things, I agree with you. If you run compliant, the ELD ain't the problem. The hours of service is the problem.
That's where we agree on. And now the other thing, and I'll be honest with you, because we're having an honest conversation here.
Exactly.
So the one thing when I heard you guys first come out and said something, well, it doesn't track the people, the people's work on the dock or whatever, I was screaming at my radio that day, oh my God, you did not just say that. Because I goes, you do know that they have, particularly nowadays with these Fitbits and other trackers, I says, I could see the day where some genius, and you know where I'm going with this, and I'm not even going to finish the sentence because I don't want to give them ideas.
And I don't disagree with what you're saying.
But so you know where I'm going with this.
Exactly.
So the problem is when I hear that argument, and I'm not saying the argument's wrong, but when I hear that argument, it's like, don't give them ideas. Don't give them ideas.
In my opinion, in OOIDA's opinion, the problem is, when that guy's on that dock working, he should be getting paid. If he was being paid for being on that dock, he wouldn't worry about going out and running more miles. If the driver was paid for every bit of his time for far too long...
You preacher, brother. I'll turn the pages.
I'll turn the pages. Too long in this industry, and it's a huge issue in this industry, driver's time is not worth anything.
Yeah.
This is and this is what I say. I was in a private meeting yesterday today with FMCSA, with the new acting administrator and Mr. Steamer. And it's, again, to bring this up every time. If you want to make guys safe and you want real highway safety, make carriers have to pay drivers for all the work they do, not just the driving.
Yep.
The big fleets, like Walmart and some of these, they don't have problems like this generally because they pay their drivers for everything they do, as they should.
Now, before I went to the company that I'm at now, which is a small fleet, and we do very specialized freight, I call it extreme white glove service, so you can guess how we're compensated quite generously. I worked for one of the major carriers before. We'll just call them, the Buzzard. Don't know why he's laughing. But anyways, I worked for them. And I started off there and I was pretty happy. But I noticed over the years, my pay wasn't really going up, even though I had quite a bit, was become one of the more senior drivers and things like that. And some of it I realized later it was the fleet I was on. There wasn't a good fleet manager match. I should have switched things a lot sooner. So I'm taking responsibility for some of it. But when I went over to the company that I am now, I was there about 6 months. And I broke down one day almost in tears when I was off for the weekend at a hotel that my company pays for now. Because I realized I was in 6 months of bankruptcy and I never knew it.
Wow.
Because there was things going on at home that I was unaware of how bad they were in terms of finances. I wasn't being told everything I needed to know.
Right.
All that kind of stuff. And I'm not blaming them because I should have made a change a lot sooner. So, I had that responsibility. But there was a lot of stuff that we were expected to do that we maybe didn't get paid. I'm not saying we didn't get paid for it, but when you look at what we were doing, we weren't paid what we should have been paid. And there's a bit of a difference. This company I'm at now, I'm not going to say they pay us for every single thing. They pay us for the vast majority of it. There's a couple things they probably pay us a little more than they need to. There's a couple things they probably pay us maybe a little less than I would like to see. But you know what? When you look at it that way, it kind of balances out.
Correct.
Fairly well. And I will just say this. I'm at a company now where, I have the easy potential, as long as I don't take off every little whip stitch, where I can easily make six figures.
That's fantastic.
And if I don't make six figures, it's going to be real high fives.
Good.
So, but that's the difference of where sometimes you have to realize that fit's not right. And I got to be honest, I've looked a little bit at owner operating, but when I go and particularly at the moment and look at what I'm getting paid now, plus all the benefits, it's kind of hard to make that switch because they pay my insurance and a 401k if I want and all this other stuff that I don't have to pay. Now, I'm not saying I couldn't do better as an owner-operator, but with the headache level, for me personally, I'm kind of going, you know what? I kind of like where I'm at now, but if things change, would I rule out an owner-operator? No. But like I said, it's kind of where you are in your life and what makes the most sense.
And I agree. And that, we do this thing, I told you a little bit about Truck to Success. We do it every year at OOIDA, and it's to take guys from company drivers all the way through becoming their own motor carrier. And I do a lot of it myself. We have lots of experts who come in and talk. But that's the one thing. Being an owner-operator isn't for everybody. And one thing a lot of guys don't think about, I probably didn't think about when I bought my first truck, you figure out all this money you can make. But you got to put that money back for a rainy day because trucks break, tires go flat, things happen. And then you also have to pay yourself. People forget that. And I know lots of guys who became owner-operators over the years, they should have stayed where they were at because they were making more driving another man's truck than their truck. And I've never completely understood that. To me, if I can make more driving somebody else's truck than my own, then why drive my own? Because you're right. I always said, I feel like you trade headaches. It's different kinds of headaches, but again, it's not for everybody, and it's a big commitment, and I can't never stress enough to anybody who gets into it, have a business plan, set up a business plan, do lots of research and study, know what your costs and all that are before you start roughly, and keep up on that all the time.
I'm going to take what you said one step further, and this is from some of my personal experience. If you're a company driver, do the same thing.
Exactly.
Because the thing is if you don't, because one of the things sometimes if you've got somebody at home, a wife taking care of the house, the kids, etc., they're stressed because your paycheck fluctuates quite a little bit, and it takes a different mindset in the budgeting and everything else on how to do that. And that's where you got to kind of sit down and have almost, I hate to say a business plan, but almost like a business plan, so you know how to prepare, know how to set things aside, know what you can afford, if you have to save up for stuff, because at the end of the day, I mean, we're fairly lucky that up until the last 2 months, freight's been pretty strong, rates have been pretty good, and fuel prices have been within the realm of reason. Well, depending on who you talk to, depends on how good freight is right now, because I know some of the load boards are saying the freight looks pretty good. We're talking to some of the owner-operators. I'm hearing a different story. They're saying that the loads seem to get a little sparser and not paying quite as good as they were even 3, 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, you're correct. I agree with what you've just said. That's what we're hearing. Kind of, I guess, both ends. I know, and I'm not picking on them, but I know that brokers, a lot of guys, owner-operators, small guys, run on the spot market. They use brokers a lot. It's great if you can get your own customers. That's what you should try to do. But if you're a guy living on the spot market and using brokers have contracts with their customers. And sometimes the brokers put a bunch of money in their pocket. Sometimes brokers have to pay more out of their pocket to get their freight covered. Brokers, I feel, have been taking a lot of money out of their pocket as of late to get some loads, but for the last couple, because things went crazy.
Yep.
And now that fuels went up, and there's fuel surcharges, and the freight market's starting to get weak, they're going to start trying to recoup some of that money. They're a business too.
Yep.
And they're going to look for opportunities. Right, wrong, or different, not here, but they're a business too, and they do that. And, what you said is correct. This is, I mean, I don't know where you stand on it. I'm sure you understand OOIDA or know where we stand. We don't believe there's a driver shortage. We believe there's a pay shortage, there's a treatment shortage, and there's a huge turnover problem. Too many guys come into this business, they're promised the moon, they're here 6 months a year, they find out they're making no money. They like to toss out this $50,000. You make $50,000 as a young person starting trucking.
Yep.
Sounds great, face value. $50,000 is a lot of money to anybody. But what I always tell people, $50,000 as an over-the-road trucker is more like a $35,000 to $40,000 a year job because it costs so much to live on the road because it is very, very expensive to be out there. Your meals, if you got to buy showers, you got to pay for parking. If you're coming in reimbursing, that's coming out of your pocket. The other thing I always tell people, trucking ain't a 40-hour-a-week job.
No.
Trucking's a 70-hour plus a week job because you get 70 hours of driving, plus you got your dock, unloading, fueling, whatever else happens that you don't get paid for. But let's just stick let's stick with 70 hours. If you take that and divide that by 50 weeks, get 2 weeks vacation, that's like $14.28 an hour. There's a McDonald's across the street from my office in Green Valley. It's starting people at $15 an hour.
Yep.
They're home every night. They sleep in their own bed. They don't have to live on the road. They don't have to worry about DOT inspections. They don't have to worry about finding a place to park and sleep every night. So that $50,000 really isn't that good in this day and age.
No, it's not. And, okay, I don't know if you're familiar with Jerry Fritz or not.
Yes.
Okay. Jerry and I have talked off and on. I've even had him on the show once or twice. And if you go back with some of the stuff Jerry talks about, and keep in mind, this is going before we had this recent increase in inflation. So let's say the number's about 5-6 years old. For a driver to be making, well, let's say back in the 80s, would you say $30,000, $30 to $50 was considered pretty darn good money.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I made in the early 1993 when I started.
And that was going back to the late 70s, early 80s, and that was essentially what we were seeing 5-10 years ago in this industry. And he says, if you look at that, what's being considered good wages now hasn't really changed from back then. But in order to, and everybody says, oh, it's about the same. What they forgot was inflation. $30,000 to $50,000 now is $80,000 to $120,000.
That's what we say all the time. Our foundation's done lots of research on this. At OOIDA, we have our foundation, and that's when, and it's well proven that if trucking had driver wages had kept up with inflation since prior to deregulation, truckers would all be making six figures right now.
Yeah.
TNCRadio.live is proud to carry the Steve Summers Overnight Drive Show. TNCRadio.live is dedicated to commercial drivers. We offer the news, traffic, and weather you need and the entertainment, sports, talk, music, and celebrity interviews you want to hear 24/7. We have original shows and trucker podcasts that feature some of your favorites, like Ice Road Alex Debogorski and America's Truckin' Sweetheart Marcia Campbell. TNCRadio.live is convenient and designed for professional drivers. The best part is we're free, and you can listen anywhere you are on the road. With just one tap, you can tune into Steve Summers and us right on your phone. Simply download our app by going to app.tncradio.live. That's app.tncradio.live.
And one of the terms I hate, and there's actually two terms I want to talk to you about because I have problems with both of them and I want to see if you agree with me. We just talked about a driver shortage. It's one of the terms I hate for two reasons. Because if I'm a business and I'm having trouble getting drivers, retaining, well, maybe I'm even paying very good, but you have these other companies that are coming along with these quasi-pyramid schemes and their pay structures. I think you kind of know who I'm talking about right now. But when you have these companies that are coming along, and on the surface it sounds good. Actually, when I did an interview with one of them recently, and about some of their program. I kind of asked them a little bit harder questions, but they're looking to pay their drivers to become recruiters in kind of a unique method. But the thing is okay, so I'm a smaller business, maybe can't compete with some of that or some of these benefits of the satellite TV systems. Okay, first of all, if your company, now there's one exception to what I'm going to say. If you're a team operation, your boss puts it on there, I says it's not because sometimes you're sitting that much, it's because now you can watch it while you're going down, well, if you want to watch TV for a little bit while you're going down the road, your co-drivers drive and you can put on your Bluetooth headset or whatever, watch a little bit of TV if you wake up earlier or whatever. That's a little bit different. If I'm a solo driver, I have enough time to watch satellite TV. Right. There's a problem.
Yes.
But that, so I mean, you with some of these quote unquote perceived perks. So if I can't fill my trucks, even if I am paying a pretty generous wage, and I'm not going to throw out a number because that's everybody has their own definition of what's generous. Right. But and I should be. But for whatever reason, people say, well, this company claims they can get me home more. This company does this. All right. I have a driver shortage. Some of these big companies, deservedly so, have a driver shortage because they have a large number of trucks that are empty. So in that sense, is there a driver shortage for certain companies? Maybe. Now, the thing is, you have to ask yourself, why do you have that driver shortage? Is it because of how you treat your drivers? Is it because of what you pay? Maybe it is because you legitimately can't compete in the area you are against the mega carriers. And if so, that sucks, and I'm sorry. So in that sense, but is there, I think, an industry-wide shortage in the way that certain groups claim? No, because first of all, how many CDL holders do we have? A lot.
A lot, and there's over 400,000 new CDLs issued every single solitary year. And 400,000 people.
Well,
and some of the same people that are pushing the driver shortage, they also admit that they have a 94% turnover rate.
Higher on some of them.
And what I would say, if 94% your average, that means you got a whole bunch that's well over 100.
There was a couple that I think were pushing 200% turnover.
I would think that was true. So, you have that problem, and then they also push the thing that we need 1.5 million new truckers in the next 5 years. 400,000 CDLs a year or more, in a little over 3 years, you got all them drivers taken care of. We got a 5-year shortage, supposedly.
Okay, and let's assume there's enough attrition in there. Okay, maybe we have to go 4 or 5 years to get to that 1.5 million because people retire or other things. But your point is very valid. There should be enough coming in. We have, I think they said, is it 3.5 million CDLs that are quote unquote on the rolls, and the best part is no one really sees. Not a problem. That's why I stopped and they de-edit easier. Because when you go and ask, I don't know which department it is, how many CDL holders are there out there? To have an active CDL, they can give you an estimate, but they don't even seem to know. But it is significantly more than what everybody says the current driver level is. So the issue now becomes, well, we have them. Why aren't they in the industry? Well, we don't have enough time to go into that conversation today. But let's say, because it was covered in some of the other people I talked with today, some of those issues. So clearly there's some issues and some problems. We know that. But it's just a situation where Oh, hey, Toby. Whatever. I tried. I've been trying to get his attention for 3 days. So, but anyways, but you kind of you see the point where I'm going on this is we know this is some existing problems. We know it's stuff that exists, but how are we going to correct it? That's a really good question. I don't think it's a simple answer because some of these people who are complaining we have a driver shortage, coincidentally, they're involved in the schools that do the training, directly or indirectly. So they have a financial incentive to keep that in. And I'm going to throw an idea out to you. I've thrown this out to a few other drivers. I want to see if, and you can answer this either as Lewie or as Lewie from OOIDA,
okay.
Each other way. Do you think that if I own a trucking company, that I should have any kind of direct or even indirect financial involvement in a trucking school?
Lewie as a truck driver, no. And Lewie as an OOIDA, no. I went to one of them things. I already had my CDL. When I turned 21 back in the day, there was about 2 big carriers that you could drive for. We'll leave them nameless. I went to one. The one I went to, I already had my CDL because I got it from the Army. Yep. So when I went to that school for 2 weeks, all I did was ride with an instructor around the state that they were based in, just sort of goofed around, while everybody else who didn't have a CDL, all they did was practice for the test.
Yep.
I came back to the trucking company now, getting a truck with a trainer. He slept the whole time while I trucked, and for 2 weeks.
Yep.
Then they took me out of that truck, and him, me, and another guy, new guy, they put us together, because I'm going to be solo when we get done, but weeks that turned us loose, we're supposed to be together for 6 weeks. He ran somebody over in like 3 weeks, and he got out, and I was solo the rest of the time.
So what some companies would call dumb and dumber.
Right, and it's kind of like the military in a way. All they're trying to do is put butts behind the seat, and send them to the front line.
And that's a sad thing because one of the things I don't know if you've had a chance to meet Kerry Hall, one of the ice road truckers who's been walking around here to show some. If he comes by again, I'll take a minute and drag him over if you're not still here. But he got started at a rather young age in Louisiana. Let's just say there was a 1 in the number, and the other number might have been below an 8. I'll let you put together the order of how you want the numbers. But it was a case where his dad and his uncle have been teaching him how to drive, and one day his uncle just says, go load up this with some gravel. When you're done, meet me up here at the top. He came up, was looking around for his uncle, and his uncle couldn't find him. One of the guys said, what are you doing? He says, can't find my uncle. He says, he said, just take it on back to the house. But this was a day when kids were done that with, whether it was 14, 15, different age, younger, older, whatever. They had been trained for however long. I'm sure you've met Monkey Gouger, Jimmy Artis. He talks about his uncle teaching him with the yardstick method. You miss a gear, whack, start over. Miss a gear, whack, start over, grind a gear, whack. And that was while the uncle was laying in the bed. He'd just reach up and go, whack. So, but when I look at a lot of because when people say 18's too young to drive a truck, and I used to be one of the ones who blanket said yes, and this is going to get into the next point I want to talk to you about. What I realize is we got some 18-year-olds out there who are some of our best drivers today, who started at or younger than 18, multi-million miles, safe drivers, but they had really good training.
And I would agree with that wholeheartedly, and I use myself as an example. I grew up on a farm in southeastern Ohio. I was driving farm machinery from a young age, big stuff. Wasn't on the road. I started driving pickup around a little bit before I was 16, and, kind of worked my way up. So I had some of the motor skills and the basics, I guess you would say, already from all that. So that's where I consider myself fortunate that, I went to the service, and driving truck in the Army is different than driving truck over the road. The mechanics and the operation of it is all the same. Trucks are trucks, but using your convoy, using other people with you, it's a lot different. Just here's your truck and you're turned out, So I agree with what you're saying. But I think, unfortunately, in America today, the family farms are pretty much gone.
Yep.
And a lot of, I know kids today that they're 18, 19 years old. They don't have a driver's license yet. They don't even care about driving. Like when I couldn't wait to turn 16.
Now, my son is 19. He doesn't have his driver's license yet, for which I'm grateful. There's a few different reasons for it. I think there will come a point in time where he could be a very good driver, but for right now, it doesn't bother me he doesn't have one.
Right.
I think he needs a little bit more time to figure a few things out. But I've met some 50 years old that I wonder what Cracker Jack box they got it out of. But getting back to the training issue, and this is, I'm going to talk to you for a minute in your position as OOIDA, because I have an issue when I hear CDL training standards. Because I think depending on where you're from depends on how you define the term. Because I was talking to a trainer the other day who's been driving for a number of years, one of the top trainers in her company, if not the field, for hazmat tanker. And we were talking about CDL training. And the problem was, when you hear CDL training, to some people, that means the training to get your license that you do at XYZ school. Now, the school that I went to was not formally affiliated with the company. There was a few loose affiliations here. But they says, our job's to train you to get your CDL or to get your license. I says, but you're going to go get your actual training in the nuances of company procedures, how they work, all these other things that we don't have enough time to teach you, that take months or longer to learn. You're going to go to one of these training companies to finish up your training. So when some drivers say CDL training standards, to me it seems like they're referring to the post, once they get their CDL, the additional training that certain companies give. But a lot of people are using it for just getting the license. And that kind of is where I think there's a lot of confusion when people say we need better CDL training standards. And I hear some of the stuff they're talking about, I'm going, but wait, that's just to get their license. What about all the training that comes afterwards? And because I was so excited when I first heard the FMCSA talking about CDL training standards, I went, oh great, they're going to standardize some of the post-CDL. And then I realized, no, they were only talking about getting you to the CDL. They weren't taking you beyond having your CDL, because you know what, whether it's a 3-week program, a 6-week, an 8-week, whatever, I mean, unless you're talking a 1 or 2 year program, which is not, it'd be great, but it's not feasible. You're not going to get somebody trained quick enough. They're not going to get their mountains through all their different seasons and everything else. So I think the point that I'm trying to get to, or the question I'm going to ask is, do you think some of the problem we have is there is some confusion on the term training standards?
Possibly. I've never really looked at it like that, but that's a good point. I guess OOIDA, speaking for OOIDA, our association has pushed for a lot stronger training standards for years and years and years. In fact, a long time ago, one of our very smart board members who predates me, he wrote an entire CDL training, truck driver training thing. It's a very good curriculum. We would like to see, and when they did this entry-level driver training, we were part of that. We were pushing for a minimum amount of hours and stuff like that. And it was in there till the last minute. One of the other bigger groups got it knocked out, And what we'd like to see, if nothing else, maybe a graduated license system, or, like this new apprentice program they're talking about or doing and starting. We'd like to see something like that. Because, you take a kid who grows up in Florida, if he's never left Florida, he's never seen snow, he's never driven on an icy road, he's never seen a mountain.
Yep.
And maybe, and we've even, maybe there's a graduated license into different kinds of trailers, because it's no offense to anyone, but pulling a van trailer is much different than pulling a flatbed where you have to chain and tarp and strap. I pulled a tanker for a little bit. I'd been driving 5 or 6 years and thought, I'm going to go lease to a tanker company.
Yep.
I worked there 6 months and I left because they sent us to school for like 2 days down in North Carolina to learn how to operate the tank. I never felt comfortable with it. I never felt like I knew exactly what I was doing correctly, and I just quit and went back to pulling my flatbed.
And the thing is I looked into doing flatbed, and I realized between my back and my knees and a few other things, unless I was going to do some of the over-dimensional where you never really have to climb up and over, you can kind of do everything either more like down, like a drop deck or step deck height or wherever. I'm going, you know what? And then I started looking at my back and says, you know what? Those chains and binders, they're not going to get any lighter as I get older. older.
No, they don't.
So I did reefer for a number of years. I now do a little bit of mostly dry van. Our company does a little bit of I don't want to say reefer, temperature-controlled loads, because a lot of the loads aren't even refrigerated. They have to be kept warm.
Right.
So I do a lot of that kind of stuff, but the places we go to now, for the most part, they know we're coming. They want to see us. They're happy to see us. We get in, we get out, we get gone.
That's great.
But it's that specialty niche market that we're in is
Right.
why it's so. And don't get me wrong, there's delays some days because there's somebody in the dock ahead of you that can only load one truck at a time or whatever. You know, it's life. It's trucking.
Things happen.
Exactly. So there is a lot of stuff like that. But the one person that I'm talking to, I'm going to have to try to get you two connected. This is the female trainer I was talking about. She's like, in her perspective, if everybody was trained to hazmat tanker standards for how to go up and down hills and a whole bunch of other things, she thinks we'd see the industry be a lot safer. I'm not saying we would. I'm not saying we wouldn't, because I would like to get some people who have, I know my little niche of trucking. I don't understand flatbedding, because there's some things that flatbedding are different, but at the same token, when I hear what she says, if you can learn how to drive a shotgun trailer full of whatever fluid, she says you can drive just about any trailer out there.
She is correct, because when I left flatbedding and went to tanker, my grandfather used to drive a milk truck, and he said, you're going to have to learn how to drive all over again. And he's right.
Yep.
And you never take your foot off the brake when you stop.
Yep.
And and you learn how to shift. And once you learn how to shift and you time the liquid and all that stuff, it'll help you in a way, but it's a whole new learning process.
Oh, it is. And what one of the things that they've told me that is evidently a joy to haul is what they call elephant snot.
Yeah, because it probably doesn't slide very much.
Oh, no, that's the problem. It does.
Oh, really?
What it is, it's a liquid that never stops moving, even when you're parked, because of the vibrations. So it starts building up these waves inside the tank, and eventually it'll slam one end or the other,
Right.
jolting you away because you just think somebody hit your truck. And I guess it's really thick and viscous, so the nickname is elephant snot.
Great leaders challenge their people not to stop at the first right answer. Tighten the Lug Nuts is the book that will help you move past that first right answer to be more effective, more productive, and more successful. This book serves as a blueprint that can be easily applied by leaders, entrepreneurs, truckers, owner-operators, all of us in our everyday lives. This is one of the best leadership books you can read to help you accelerate towards your personal and professional goals. Plus, a portion of the proceeds will be donated to truckerschristmasgroup.org. Visit TightenTheLugNuts.com to order your copy today.
Well, here's the thing is, and I'm going to pick on myself for a minute. When I went to school in Pennsylvania, this is about 16 years ago, the hazmat test was pretty rigorous. You know, the basic trucking
Right.
test was pretty rigorous. The doubles and triples endorsement, I think, was 10 questions, of which you had to get 7 right.
Yeah, it wasn't very much. I haven't.
I think we'll highlight the same basic test, and then the tank test. I can't remember which was the harder of the two tests, but like by 2 questions. And I have a tank endorsement.
Yep.
I've never had to do anything with a tank unless you count the big square cubes full of liquid.
Totes.
The totes, thank you.
But you have to have a tanker endorsement for
Which
those.
you do now, and actually that is the one thing I am glad on that they've added that.
Well, you can thank OOIDA for that.
Thank you, because that is a good thing. But the thing is, and then I hear what other people have had to do to get their tanker or their doubles and triples endorsement, depending on the state or the school. They actually had to pull a tank. They actually had to play with the sets and the whole 9 yards. I'm just sitting here going, yeah, I have a license that says I can do it. Do I know how to do it? Not a clue. I'm being completely honest, but my license says I can.
Well, see, I pulled those totes for many years. Water treatment chemicals in them little totes. I'd haul full ones out and bring empty ones back to Ohio. And that's what I said, after pulling a tanker, and now I went to pulling them little totes. It was kind of helpful. But I thought them little totes in some ways was worse because they wouldn't be quite full. And now you got 20 of them things on there, and the liquid in them's going all different directions. And, that was one of the things. It's been a few years ago when this came up about, I was on the board then and pulling them totes, and that's part of the reason I said, I don't see why you don't have a tanker endorsement for them, because they are a bulk container. They're considered a bulk container.
Yep.
They are a specialty, and they're just not like hauling anything. They're their own little animal.
Well, I'm gonna tattle on myself for a second, because a number of years ago I picked up a load of bulk containers out of Momentive up there, GE in Watertown, New York, taking it down south, and I've been going along good, and everything was fine. Stopped to visit my mother for a while in Binghamton, New York, at that little old TA down there. Got out of the parking lot, started driving through the parking lot, hit the brake, and something felt weird. Felt like the brakes were just a little sloshy or pulsing a little bit. And I check a couple things. I'm on the phone to our road rescue department trying to figure it out. It says, well, you're on the road. Go down to Scranton here. We'll set you up, go right into the TA shop. We've called them. They can take you, look at your brakes. The mechanic is crawling under the truck. He's like, I can't figure out what's wrong. He has me move around a little bit in the bay. He's checking each brake, making sure everything is adjusted right, watching him hit. Everything's right. And then all of a sudden, I don't know what it is, I hit the brake just a little bit harder. And it pulsed, and he goes, what the heck is going on? It says, and then it says, and the thing is, I'd already told our road rescue department what I was carrying in the totes. I told the mechanic what I was carrying in the totes. All of us completely forgot about the slosh you can get from totes.
Oh, okay.
And then all of a sudden, it just dawned on all of us around the same time. It was because of the slosh in the totes. And because I hadn't pulled a tote probably at that point in 3 years. So
that's a completely different feeling.
And I had forgotten about it because I had hauled it before and felt it, but it had been so long, my memory just went, and even the mechanic was, and we're just all looking at each other doing one of these.
Yeah.
So if I had a brown paper bag, it'd be over my head right now.
We all have those moments.
Oh, and we do, but I mean, the mechanic was like, when I called work, and because they were even all talking to each other in the shop, trying to talk to different mechanics, figure out what the problem was. And when I said that, they're like, oh God, really?
It was just a nut behind the wheel, right?
And that was the thing but everybody had forgotten about the slosh in the totes.
Right.
So, but I agree with you, you have to know that, and if you don't know how to drive if you haven't at least studied the principles of driving a tanker, you have no business pulling the totes. I will 100% agree with you on that.
And I agree. I mean, when you go around turns, you got to slow down more.
Yep.
It's the same principle.
Exactly. But hey, Lewie, I know you need to get some things done. I've got a couple other people here that want to talk to me, so thank you so much.
You're better than me?
Well,
I'm just kidding.
Actually, have you ever met Dave Jakes before?
No, I haven't.
I'll introduce you here in a minute, but it's great seeing you, Lewie.
Hey,
thanks so much for stopping by.
Thanks for having us, as always. Anytime.
Hey, thanks for listening to TNCRadio.live's presentation of Keep On Talkin' with your host, Tom Kirk. For more information, or to ask a question, or to tell more about your story, send email to info@tncradio.live.